The AFP has a fascinating story out about how the Taliban is kicking the ass of ISIS. They report, quote, ISIS had ambitious plans for Afghanistan, but Taliban resistance, U.S. drone strikes, and a society less scarred by sectarianism means the extremists have so far failed to repeat their Middle Eastern breakthrough. The jihadist group, which controls large areas of Syria and Iraq, has been trying for months to establish itself in Afghanistan's eastern badlands, challenging the Taliban on their own turf. But the loss of senior commanders in drone strikes and the group's signature brutality, which repels many Afghans, has helped stem its advance. Beyond the battlefield, the Taliban have been far more successful than ISIS in attracting the support of local Afghans. So they go on to explain that the Taliban has called ISIS too barbaric and too vicious. So there's an example they give about how ISIS executed Afghani Muslims. They lit them all on fire, and of course they release it on social media. And people in Afghanistan, including other fundamentalist Muslims, were like, that's fucked up. They're like, that's un-Islamic. Behead the Christians all you want, behead the atheists all you want, but come on. We're talking about another Muslim here. What are you doing? So, there's a backlash, man. Now, some people have actually defected from the Taliban to ISIS. Mullah Omar is dead. He was the leader of the Taliban. One of his sons apparently defected to ISIS, but according to the reports, they're getting their ass beat. A lot of people are still much more in line with Taliban philosophy, and there's actually a variety of reasons for that. So there are deep religious differences, believe it or not, between the groups too. So the Taliban believes in what's called Deobandi fundamentalism, which includes not only, obviously, strict adherence to Sharia, but also you have to know the history of it and understand that it was birthed out of resistance to British colonialism. So they've always been more of a guerrilla army than anything else, and they don't have global caliphate ambitions. Now, that's starkly different from ISIS, who they tell you, we're Wahhabists, we're Salafists, and we have global caliphate ambitions. So, by any objective standard, it's obvious they're both terrorist groups and they're both bad, but ISIS is way, way worse. And then there's also ethnic differences, like, I always forget the name of the region. Oh, the Pashtun region, I think. So a lot of people in the Taliban in that region are Pashtun, and they're kind of standoffish to those who are not Pashtun. So there's another kind of natural alliance more with the Taliban as opposed to ISIS. So it gets really weird, but it also gets really interesting. And it speaks to something that I've been mentioning for a very, very long time now, which is ISIS is going to self-destruct, and they're going to self-destruct because nobody fucking likes them. Nobody likes them. So you say, well, that's not true. They have a decent number of people. You're right. They do have a decent number of people. We've spoken about it before. CIA estimates are that it's about 30,000 people in ISIS. The Kurds estimate that it's as high as 200,000. I'll go on the record and say I don't believe them. I don't think it's that much. But either way, you know who they've made enemies with? Other than the Taliban, which is like, okay, you're done. Like, if you're against the Taliban, who is 60,000 strong and big in Islamic fundamentalist circles, if you're against them, you're already done. But they've also made enemies with al-qaeda. In fact, they were birthed out of a disagreement within al-qaeda. And also groups like Hamas, for example. All the Shia militias in the region and Hamas, which of course is separate from the Shia militias, but, there were articles not too long ago about how Hamas warned ISIS, like, no, you don't fuck with us. Like, don't come in our region here. We're gonna fuck you up. And they did. They bulldozed a mosque in Gaza that they thought had ISIS activity in it. And there were examples of like Hamas killing somebody in ISIS and then like putting their body in the center square. I mean, like, oh, you think there's two games in town, son? No. We have the market locked down in this area, bitch. You want to come get some? Come get some. You ain't got no prayer. Get the fuck out of here with your nonsense. So when your whole goal and your ideology is Muslim fundamentalism, and you've alienated the Taliban, al-Qaeda, and other groups. Really? Do I need to say anything else? They've executed people in their own ranks because they dared to smoke a cigarette. We covered that story too not too long ago in Syria. Once somebody who was, in a fairly high position in ISIS, you smoked a cigarette, beheaded him. You want to keep acting like that? Go right ahead. You're going to destroy yourselves. See, again, it all goes back to it was never the religious nuts themselves that led to the territorial success. That's not possible. You want to know why? They're dumbasses. If they believe in literal interpretation of scripture and they're really barbaric, they're not bright. So who was successful in getting them all that territory if they didn't do it? You already know the answer to this. Saddam's former Ba'athist generals. We covered those articles. One of those guys is dead now, which is why, ISIS is in even more trouble now. But he was a guy who was a former Ba'athist, so a relatively secular Sunni under Saddam's regime. And he has all these letters where he says, I don't agree with these guys. I think they're crazy, but I can't stand the Shiites oppressing us. Fuck Maliki. So we're going to take over more territory here. I'm going to use these guys to get in power again, and then I'll try to take control. So it's only because of the relatively secular Sunni Ba'athists taking over the territory, because they know the territory and they've done it before, that ISIS was successful. Without that, without a brain behind it, TikTok, bitch, you pissed off everybody else in the fundamentalist world, never mind everybody else who's not in the fundamentalist world, and then you have that to deal with as well? Oh, forget it. It is a matter of time. So it's a matter of apparently other fundamentalists wiping them out, other people in the region who are moderates wiping them out, the international community playing a role in wiping them out, and it will be over at some point, believe you me. There's just too much evidence pointing in that direction for anybody to believe otherwise.